Welcome to the Federal Aviation Administration's Avoiding Airplane Upsets video. This video is a product of the FAA's Safer Skies agenda, a renewed commitment between FAA and industry to develop educational programs designed to reduce the number of aviation accidents.
Hi, I'm Sean Elliott, the President of the National Association of Flight Instructors. One of the most important missions of our organization is safety. Most flight instructors define safety as minimizing risk through quality training and education. The members of the IAC, or International Aerobatics Club, share this definition. The IAC is a competitive aerobatics organization, but more importantly, its focus on safety affects all types of pilots flying all types of aircraft. The IAC has enjoyed an outstanding safety record over its 30-plus years of aerobatic competition. It's because of this expertise, along with the educational focus of NAFI, that the FAA has commissioned the IAC to develop the program you're about to see. I'm certain you'll find the program both informational and educational, but most importantly, I'm certain you'll find it of value in making you a safer pilot.
Mike Goulian can boast such accomplishments as being named U.S. Unlimited National Champion, being a three-time member of the U.S. National Aerobatic Team, and securing multiple medals at the World Aerobatic Championships. Goulian is also a certified flight instructor, specializing in aerobatic instruction. In his spare time, he amazes crowds with spectacular airshow performances. Julie Savage earned her certified flight instructor's rating while completing her bachelor's degree at Southern Illinois University. Julie has competed successfully on the precision flight team at SIU, and in 1999 won top female pilot in the nation at the National Intercollegiate Flying Association Safety and Evaluation Conference. Julie currently flies for American Eagle Airlines based out of Chicago O'Hare Airport. In her spare time, she serves on the foundation board of the Experimental Aircraft Association.
The FAA has identified 6 categories into which a large majority of general aviation accidents can occur. Number 2 on that list is loss of control. The loss of control associated with an unintentional airplane upset has become a popular topic in recent years.
It certainly has. So much so that several airlines and corporate flight departments have added upset recovery training to their recurrent training programs. And even NASA funded a study to determine the potential benefits of hands-on upset recovery training.
In this program, we'll take a closer look at 3 classic airplane upset scenarios. Each is associated with rolling, possibly to high angles of bank. All are accident scenarios that continue to get pilots into trouble. We'll also discuss strategies to help you recognize and avoid situations that can lead to these or similar roll upsets.
But first, let's define what we mean by a roll upset. For our purposes, a roll upset involves any uncontrolled or uncommanded change in your airplane's bank angle. As the bank continues to increase, it usually becomes more and more difficult to maintain the desired heading, altitude profile, airspeed, or attitude.
For example, if you are intending to cruise along in wings level flight at a constant altitude, but the airplane suddenly rolls over to 90 degrees of bank, you are experiencing a roll upset. With this in mind, let's look at our 3 scenarios. Roll upsets have been with us since the beginnings of power flight. These potentially disastrous scenarios have been, and continue to be, concerns that we, as responsible pilots, must deal with.
The first roll upset scenario develops from a botched turn and results in an uncontrolled descending spiral. Although the process leading to this upset can start from any bank angle, it's usually associated with steeper bank turns. While attempting to turn, the pilot unintentionally allows the bank angle to increase without simultaneously increasing back elevator pressure. The pilot is slow to react as the nose of the airplane drops below the horizon.
Airspeed increases noticeably as the altimeter and vertical speed indicator show a rapid loss of altitude. Reacting now to the accelerating nose-low attitude, the pilot instinctively pulls back on the elevator control, trying to get the nose up. Unfortunately, this action only tightens the descending spiral.
Frozen on the controls, holding aft elevator, the pilot is unable to recover from the spiral. Prior to ground impact, the airplane may suffer structural failure as airspeed and G-load design limits are exceeded.
The next scenario involves a weather-induced upset. Perhaps as a result of turbulence in the atmosphere, mountain waves, or thunderstorm activity. Flight into icing conditions poses multiple hazards to the pilot as well, including the potential for a roll upset, even if the airplane is equipped with an anti-ice system.
The pilot is flying in instrument conditions on the autopilot. The weather is conducive to icing with visible rain and freezing conditions. Large droplets splatter on impact with the windshield. Small streams of water streak across those side windows. Ridges of ice begin to form on the wings ahead of the ailerons. Masked by the autopilot, the pilot is unable to sense an unusual vibration in the control wheel. The autopilot disengages as the ailerons deflect suddenly to the control stop. Caught off guard, the uncommanded roll causes the pilot to pull back on the elevator control as the airplane rolls inverted. In the third upset scenario, air traffic control sequences a small airplane behind a larger, heavier aircraft miles ahead. The pilot is cleared for the visual approach straight in and is cautioned about the possibility of wake turbulence.
Ambient lighting conditions, however, are such that the pilot of the small airplane is not yet able to see the traffic ahead or its flight path. The winds are light with barely a hint of a quartering tailwind. The air is smooth. Assuming the heavy traffic is flying precisely along the 3-degree VASI glide slope, the pilot of the small airplane sets up to do the same. The pilot begins to fixate on the approach.
As the approach continues, the pilot encounters a bump in the air, followed quickly by another. Then the airplane rolls sharply beyond 90 degrees of bank. The pilot's delayed reaction is a timid attempt to apply opposite aileron as the airplane rolls inverted. The unusual attitude, sudden loss of altitude, and loosely secured seatbelt caused the pilot to pull back on the elevator control.
These accident scenarios actually share a number of common traits. In each case, the pilot did not recognize warning signs until the scenario turned into a full-blown unusual attitude.
The pilot's situational awareness was compromised prior to each roll upset as well.
Corrective actions either were initiated too late or were not applied fully to counteract the increasing angle of bank.
And in each case, the pilot's natural instinct to pull on the elevator control aggravated the situation and detracted from the pilot's ability to apply corrective aileron.
Pilots use the terms roll and bank interchangeably to describe how the aircraft moves about its longitudinal axis. The longitudinal axis is an imaginary line drawn from the nose of the aircraft through the tail.
And we roll about the longitudinal axis, Julie, using the ailerons. And when we use the ailerons to roll, we actually are changing the shape of the wing.
By deflecting the ailerons, we are changing the chord line. The chord line is also an imaginary line that runs from the leading edge of the wing through the trailing edge. When we change the chord line in relation to the relative wind, we are creating an angle of attack.
When banking in normal, unstalled flight, the upward deflected aileron, the aileron on the same side as your roll input, tilts the local chord line forward, instantly decreasing the local angle of attack. This results in a decrease in the net lift on the up aileron side of the airplane.
On the other wing, the downward deflected aileron tilts the local chord line back, instantly increasing the local angle of attack. The net lift on the side of the airplane increases.
It's this difference in lift that causes the airplane to bank in the direction of your aileron input. How fast an airplane rolls depends on several factors, including the length of the wing, the airspeed, and the amount of aileron applied.
For example, a high-performance aerobatic airplane may be capable of roll rates as high as 360 degrees per second, or faster, with very little effort on the controls and little loss of altitude. But it's not always necessary for the pilot physically to apply the ailerons for an airplane to roll. Environmental agents such as icing and wake turbulence can induce changes in bank angle as well.
Icing conditions involving a phenomenon known as supercooled large droplets, for example, can lead to the ailerons deflecting of their own accord.
Supercooled large droplets are usually associated with freezing rain or freezing drizzle at temperatures from 0 degrees Celsius down to minus 10 degrees Celsius. However, the droplets can appear in temperatures as cold as minus 18 degrees Celsius. And many encounters with supercooled droplets occur in stratiform clouds.
The ensuing ice formation may take on the appearance of ridges, fingers, or feathers.
Ridges of ice accumulating ahead of the aileron can alter the air flowing over the control surface. In some cases, this can reduce aileron control authority. In other cases, the growing ridges of ice can upset the balance of aerodynamic forces, causing the aileron to be snatched into a deflected position. The resulting roll is the same as if the pilot had made the aileron input.
Whether it's in response to a physical input by the pilot or to aerodynamic forces unbalanced by the ice buildup, deflecting the ailerons causes the airplane to roll.
The roll induced by wake turbulence, on the other hand, has little to do with aileron deflection. Instead, it's the swirling mass of disturbed air left behind a flying aircraft that drives the roll associated with wake turbulence.
Anytime a wing produces lift, it sheds vortices, horizontal tornadoes spun off the trailing edge of the wing as it moves through the air. How vortices are formed is quite interesting. Predicting how they will behave, however, is quite difficult.
Air rushing past the trailing edge of the wings is deflected downward and outward, away from the airplane. At the same time, the difference in air pressure above and below the wing, lower pressure above, higher pressure below, curls the air outward and upward near the wing tips.
Imagine sheets of air flowing across the wing. As these sheets move downward, outward, and then curl upward, the air rolls up into a vortex. Viewed from behind, the vortex from the left wing rotates clockwise, the vortex from the right wing rotates counterclockwise. In general, vortices develop about 2 to 4 wingspans behind an aircraft. Heavy, slow, aerodynamically clean aircraft produce the strongest vortices. However, even vortices from aircraft comparable in size to your own could influence your flight path.
Wind, temperature, and atmospheric conditions all have an effect on vortex behavior. Consequently, vortices are somewhat unpredictable. They tend to last longer in light wind and smooth air, retaining most of their energy until they dissipate. But if the ambient air is turbulent, vortices will tend to break up quicker.
At altitude, vortices can descend at several hundred feet per minute. They tend to level off about 5 miles behind, and anywhere from 500 feet up to 1,000 feet below the generating aircraft.
If vortices reach the surface, they will then tend to move laterally across the ground, but the direction and speed of movement will be influenced by surface winds. In some cases, vortices might even rebound back into the air. If a vortex rebounds, it may bounce several wingspans above the generating aircraft's flight path.
In the case where the lead aircraft is heavy, slow, and has a longer wingspan than the trailing aircraft, the rotational energy of the resulting vortex can be great enough to roll the trailing aircraft, even if the pilot applies opposite aileron to counteract it.
Most airplanes, even aerobatic ones, naturally begin to pitch earthward as bank angle increases. At the same time, steeply banked airplanes have a tendency to continue to roll to greater angles of bank.
This overbanking tendency is a normal part of the aerodynamics of steeply banked flight. As the banked airplane begins to turn around a point, the wing on the outside of the turn travels faster than the inside wing. The outside wing generates slightly more lift as a result, rolling the airplane farther in the direction it's banked.
At a large bank angle, the airplane tends to overbank and pitch earthward, causing an uncontrolled spiral. In general, pulling the elevator control aft during this process merely aggravates the situation.
In the traditional sense, an uncontrolled spiral is a steeply banked, descending turn. An airplane in a spiral is not stalled. Therefore, airspeed and G-load increase, perhaps rapidly in an aerodynamically clean airplane.
In its most extreme form, a spiral might actually resemble a split-S maneuver, where the angle of bank reaches 180 degrees as the airplane dives toward the ground.
It's also important to know that structural design limits are lower than the published limits when an airplane is in the process of banking. For example, the positive design limit in the normal category is 3.8 Gs, but this limit is only available under certain conditions. One is that the flaps must be up, another is that the airplane must not be rolling.
Roll inputs impose a twisting moment on the wing, making it weaker structurally. If the pilot is pulling the elevator aft, pulling some G's while simultaneously rolling, the airplane could suffer structural damage or possibly structural failure before reaching its published design limit.
Recognition and avoidance are the two most effective strategies when it comes to airplane upsets, especially where the prospect of an encounter with ice or wake turbulence are concerned.
Awareness and recognition of the warning signs preceding a roll upset will allow you to avoid an unusual attitude. It's also beneficial to have an exit strategy you can implement before having a full-blown emergency.
For example, during a level turn in cruise flight, the nose of the airplane should remain in the same position relative to the horizon throughout the maneuver. Bank angle should not change either. At the same time, the cockpit noise level should remain constant. The added weight the pilot senses during the turn should remain the same as well. In level turns, each bank angle has a unique G load attached to it, barely over 1 G at 15 degrees of bank, 1.4 Gs at 45 degrees of bank, 2 Gs at 60 degrees of bank. The pilot must match the G load to the bank angle without delay. Otherwise, the airplane will not remain in level flight.
A change in any of these references, nose dipping lower than it should, sound level increasing, the bank creeping steeper, G load increasing, will be readily apparent to pilots who develop their visual and tactile cues. Changes will register on the instruments too, but they may lag behind the other more immediately available cues.
The exit strategy for a botched turn is simple. As soon as you sense a turn is not progressing exactly the way you intended, shallow the bank. If you encounter more pronounced spiraling characteristics, release back elevator pressure, even if the nose is pointing down, prior to shallowing the bank.
Avoiding upsets due to icing begins during pre-flight planning. Study the weather briefing closely. Temperatures, freezing levels, precipitation en route. Determine headings and altitudes that could take you to warmer air just in case. And pay attention to available pilot reports. Of course, your first avoidance option would be to postpone the flight, to make the no-go decision.
If you choose to fly in icing conditions, do so only in aircraft approved for such flight, and be wary for the telltale signs of supercooled large droplets. Visible rain, outside air temperature between 0 and minus 18 degrees Celsius, stratiform clouds, droplets that splash on impact, ice that forms aft of anti-ice equipment, or that extends beyond the usual limits of a non-heated propeller spinner.
Review the specific procedures detailed in your airplane flight manual regarding flight in icing conditions. In general, as soon as you detect supercooled large droplets, take the following actions. Disengage the autopilot and hand fly the airplane. Roll to wings level. Reduce your angle of attack, or if you're below flap extension speed, consider adding the first notch of flaps only. However, do not retract flaps if they are already extended. Give airspeed control higher priority than altitude control, even if the airplane is descending. Feel for disturbances in the control wheel, in the roll axis such as vibrating or buffeting. Be ready to apply whatever force is necessary to prevent the airplane from rolling.
Advise air traffic control of your situation. Request heading and altitude changes to get the airplane into warmer air, or out of the clouds, or perhaps into considerably colder air. Don't be shy about declaring an emergency, or at the very least demanding immediate assistance to exit the current conditions. Keep in mind the following important points as well.
The procedures described for a roll upset in icing conditions are different from those for another ice-related phenomenon, the tailplane stall. Application of the incorrect procedure during an icing event can seriously compound the situation. Correct identification of the problem is imperative.
Unlike a roll upset, symptoms of a tailplane stall include vibrations, an abnormal nose-down trim change, sudden changes in elevator effectiveness or in elevator forces, or an uncommanded nose-down pitch.
Aileron is the primary control to prevent or correct a roll upset. The elevator is the primary corrective control during a tailplane stall.
The large majority of reported encounters with wake turbulence occur at altitudes below 5,000 feet AGL, and nearly half of those encounters occur below traffic pattern altitude. In fact, the most common wake turbulence scenario involves a landing aircraft following another landing aircraft. The next two most likely times to encounter wake turbulence are the cruise and takeoff phases of flight.
In many instances, the pilot is actually aware of the potential for wake turbulence, but still manages to get caught in it.
If your route of flight will place you in the vicinity of a larger, heavier traffic, be sure to review wake turbulence avoidance procedures as part of your pre-flight planning.
In the air, keep your flight path well above the flight paths of heavier traffic ahead of you. If this is impossible, then be sure to give yourself plenty of separation from the traffic.
In the pattern, pay attention not only to the reported wind, but also to the wind as shown by the airport windsocks and other wind indicators. Note the touchdown and rotation points of the heavier traffic ahead, and visualize how the vortices will travel over time.
Your avoidance strategy perhaps should include waiting longer than normal before departing behind heavy traffic, even if air traffic control clears you for takeoff or if waiting puts you further behind schedule.
Avoidance might include intentionally flying above the normal glide slope as well. It also includes sometimes executing a go-around. Let's revisit our roll-up set scenarios, paying close attention now to the various warning signs. The pilot attempts a steep turn, but the nose drops below the horizon. The airplane's overbanking tendency kicks in as a spiral tendency appears. Airspeed increases, the altimeter unwinds. The pilot pulls hopelessly on the elevator control, tightening the spiral. The increased load factor presses the pilot down into the seat. The ambient noise level rises. Airspeed and G-load approach their design limits.
The pre-flight weather briefing noted icing conditions along the route of flight. Pilot reports abound with icing encounters in the clouds. The airplane's outside air temperature gauge shows freezing temperatures. Large droplets pelt the airplane. Water streaks across the side windows, ridges of ice form. The autopilot is still on as the ailerons begin to vibrate. The ailerons snatch to the control stop, but the pilot pulls back on the elevator control.
Surface winds are reported as light. The air is smooth. Conditions are ideal for strong vortices to linger. The pilot is unable to see the large traffic ahead, but assumes it's flying along a 3-degree glide slope. The airplane suddenly rolls. Surprised and unable to stay securely in the seat, the pilot pulls back on the elevator.
Again, the best overall strategy is to avoid these roll-up set scenarios in the first place. Remain alert in the flight environment, heed the warning signs, and be prepared to react decisively should the airplane deviate from controlled flight. Shallow the bank as soon as you lose precise control over a turn. Never fly an airplane into known icing conditions if it's not approved for such flight. Turn off the autopilot and request immediate assistance at the first indications of icing. Give yourself plenty of separation from heavier aircraft. Separation is your responsibility as pilot in command. Don't tolerate uncommanded changes in bank angle either. As soon as the bank strays from your intended angle, even if it's only a little, apply whatever aileron and coordinating rudder is necessary to stop it, and avoid pulling aft on the elevator in the process.
The exercises we are about to describe can be dangerous. It is imperative that you receive competent instruction on the proper procedures involved. Call your flight instructor for a dual session to practice these routines. Do not try them on your own without a check flight.
Be sure to perform clearing turns before and while practicing the following training exercises. And as the pilot in command, be sure to adhere strictly to the operating limitations listed in your airplane's flight manual and posted on cockpit placards. Here's an excellent exercise that not only will improve your aileron and rudder coordination, but also will allow you to explore the range of aileron available in your airplane. In the practice area, set your airplane in a comfortable, slow cruise configuration at an airspeed below the published maneuvering speed. Look over the nose at a point on the horizon. Smoothly apply left aileron and a small amount of left rudder. Roll to 30 degrees of bank, then smoothly apply right aileron and some right rudder. Bank continuously from side to side. Focusing on the aileron as your primary input, rudder actions should be smaller by comparison. Use just enough rudder to keep the nose of your airplane on the reference point. As your skills improve, increase the bank angle to 45 degrees. Begin applying more and more aileron as you roll from side to side. Apply rudder simultaneously, but only as needed. And avoid inadvertently pulling aft on the elevator during the exercise. See if you can eventually apply full aileron while banking from side to side. keeping the airplane on heading and on altitude. A variation of the first exercise involves performing a level turn after establishing the bank. As before, set the airplane in slow cruise below maneuvering speed. This time, pick 2 reference points on the horizon, one over the nose and one off your left wingtip. Roll left to 45 degrees of bank without turning. The instant you reach the target bank angle, quickly neutralize aileron and rudder inputs. Then smoothly apply just enough back elevator pressure to pull the nose along the horizon in a level turn. Upon reaching your other reference point, completely release back elevator pressure to stop the nose on that point. Next, apply coordinated right aileron and right rudder while holding your new heading. Roll to 45 degrees of bank, neutralize aileron and rudder inputs, then pull the nose back to your initial reference point in a level turn. Upon returning to your original heading, release back elevator pressure first, then roll to wings level. Repeat the exercise, each time striving to add more and more aileron when changing the bank angle. Keep your aileron and elevator actions completely separate from each other. Be sure to return aileron and rudder exactly to neutral before applying aft elevator, and return the aft elevator completely to neutral before applying aileron and rudder. Remember, aileron is a primary input here. Rudder and elevator actions are relatively small by comparison. If the nose drops below the horizon and airspeed increases during the exercise, immediately release back elevator pressure and roll back to wings level. Our last exercise is a controlled spiral. Starting from the same slow cruise configuration, roll to 30 degrees of bank. Reduce some power and begin a descending turn. Maintain a constant airspeed down to a target altitude. Try spiraling at 45 or even 60 degrees of bank as well, keeping the airspeed constant throughout the descent. If at any point the airspeed begins to increase, reduce the bank angle right away. Practice the recovery technique for an unintentional spiral when you reach your target altitude. Reduce power to idle, release back elevator pressure, roll to wings level using coordinated aileron and rudder, then return to level flight. No matter how much flight time you have, don't be embarrassed if you're uncomfortable with turbulence or the prospect of encountering an airplane upset. And don't hesitate to get some instruction if you don't feel competent to practice the exercises we've recommended.
Additional dual instruction, either as part of your next flight review or the FAA's Wings program, can go a long way toward turning your anxiety about unusual attitudes into renewed confidence. Additional flight training can improve your situational awareness as well.
Make use of these and other resources and never stop being a student. Strive to learn all you can about the flight environment while staying current with the exercises that we've described. Know the limits of your own airplane, but most importantly of your own skills.
Exercise good judgment and remain situationally aware, especially when flying near the ground. Get some dual instruction once in a while and learn to recognize the warning signs preceding a loss of control.
After viewing this program, perhaps you have gained valuable insights that will make you a better and safer pilot. Don't stop there. Take the next step. For information on expanding your flight envelope as a pilot, consider joining the IAC. IAC's website can be found at iac.org. If you're a certified flight instructor and would like to expand your abilities as a quality educator, consider joining NAFI. NAFI's website can be found at nafinet.org. Always from the right seat, this is Sean Elliott saying thank you for your interest in safety.